Uh, Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. For those of you who have just stumbled across this page or are seeing it in the future, recorded on our YouTube page, welcome. My name is Steve Owens. I am a candidate for state representative here at the 29th Middlesex District, which is most of Watertown and parts of West and North Cambridge. Thanks for stopping by. Today, we are continuing our series of town halls on various issues of interest. This, I believe, is now our sixth town hall. Last week, we had Quentin Palfrey stop by to talk about voter enfranchisement and voter rights issues. Before that, we had Representative John Santiago talking about the intersection of COVID and legislation. And we've had experts on immigration and housing, and I'm sure I'm forgetting now. But today, we are very lucky to have, I think, one of the state legislators' preeminent experts on clean energy, State Representative Maria Robinson. Representative, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you stopping by and having this conversation with us.
Absolutely. And next time I have to actually come to Watertown and eat something in Watertown, which has so many fabulous places. And my name is Maria Robinson, and I'm state representative for about 2/3 of the great city of Framingham. But more importantly, I share an office with the wonderful Jonathan Hecht in a time period in which people actually went to offices together. So I actually know more than the average bear about Watertown, Cambridge, and the 29th Middlesex, and I think you're all very lucky that Steve is running. I think he'll be a fabulous representative. But today, wanted to talk about one of my favorite topics, and I believe one of Steve's favorite topics as well. Some of the efforts going around in the State House around clean energy, environmental issues, and there's, we could take this conversation in a really wide variety of directions, but wanted to first give a quick update, which is to say that as of Friday, the governor's ban on reusable bags has been lifted, which means that you can now take your reusable bags back to the grocery store and not have to use one of those awful plastic, very thick film things that they seem to have there. And I think that's a really good movement. Of course, the Senate earlier this year banned plastic bags overall, and we're still waiting for that to come to the House with hopes of getting that to the finish line. I know that's something I hear about an awful lot. Even though our own municipality has put forward rules, folks are really excited about the idea of a statewide ban there. Does Watertown and Cambridge have something like that?
Yeah, so Cambridge was one of the earlier adopters of the ban, and then Watertown followed, I think, maybe a year or so afterwards. I will say that I have actually noticed an increase of plastic bag litter outside during the pandemic, which was very disappointing. But I am glad that we can now reuse. The reusable bags are back in play. I think that actually made a very big difference around here. At least noticing it. Just walking around outside, you noticed when the ban happened that there were fewer, and you noticed it enough so that when the ban was back on, there were more outside, stuck in the trees, collecting rainwater, things like that. So that's great news. I'm really excited about that. You mentioned that the Senate did pass that in the other thing that they have done, in the winter, in the pre-COVID times, was their climate package that they passed. I guess it must have been in January. It feels like it was January 50 years ago now.
Yep, sure.
But I think, it was earlier this year. Time's running out on the legislative calendar. Obviously, I'm wondering, is there any hope for movement? I know the legislature has so much to do in the next few weeks, let alone months. What can we hope will happen moving forward in the House on climate?
Sure. So you mentioned the Senate bill, which I think was a really big piece of climate mitigation legislation. And then the House last fall sometime passed the Greenworks bill, which was a big climate adaptation bill. And I think there are a lot of folks out there who hope in an ideal world, each chamber just passes the other chamber's bill and we can get those to the finish line. But in the meantime, I think a big piece of the Senate bill was what is considered the 2050 roadmap bill. Now, Governor Baker has set forward standards to try and get us to some amount of net zero that's really only getting us to 5% higher than what the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2008 gets us to. This bill, which is supported by the Environmental League of Massachusetts, really gets us to that full 100% net zero, and sets clear benchmarks along the way. So that was one of the components of the bill in the Senate side that I think is moving along nicely on the House side that we're hoping to see. But like any good bill that's moving, I'm sure there will be a lot of amendments that go along with that to try and make some movement, particularly in areas of electric vehicles, which I think we haven't seen a ton of movement on our side of the building, which is increasingly important, especially as we reimagine what car usage looks like in COVID times.
Right, and I know electric vehicles is something that you have been working on, as well as Representative Hecht has been working on. Is there any? I know one of the bigger problems, apart from the price of some of those vehicles to the consumer, is also the location of charging infrastructure. Has there been any thoughts and movements on plans to increase the amount of charging stations in places where we think we would need them? For example, garages, transit nodes, parking facilities. Any sort of movements along incentivizing that sort of infrastructure, or providing flat out providing it as a public service?
Yeah, that's a big part of what the Greenworks bill was trying to do, was trying to give cities and towns some bond money in order to move forward with constructing electric vehicle infrastructure. And earlier we did extend some of the rebates for EVs, but I think it is this larger reimagining where we make it a little bit more financially feasible for folks. The costs are coming way down, but not every family fits into a Chevy Bolt yet, as much as we would like for them to. And the Ford F-150s are still a couple of years away, so I think it's helping people make that investment more feasible for their own families. I know that's something the Green Consumers Alliance has been doing a really great job of, where they'll tell you what kind of deals you can get from different dealerships across the Commonwealth. There was a period of time when I thought about driving to Northampton to buy an electric vehicle, but right now we're not driving so much, which I don't hate, but I think that there's also this component of just getting people out of their cars. Yeah. I know for us out in Metro West, toll equity is our favorite phrase of all time. I was just saying, man, it really stinks that we toll the Pike and not 93 or 95. But I think there's a real conversation to be had around congestion pricing and whether that makes the most sense. I imagine for where you are, you have so many people going through Watertown and Cambridge that aren't there to stay, and increasing pollution locally, that there's a lot of incentive to really consider some major changes there.
Yeah, and I think so. Congestion pricing and toll equity is very important, and it's important for my wife, Pia. She reverse commutes, so she goes out to Natick. Well, she would go out to Natick every day if we could go anywhere. With the camps and the schools closed, it's hard to do that. But yeah, so toll equity is important, because even the reverse commute is not great, or was not great before, and there's really a big risk that people nervous about taking the commuter rail during the peak time. Commuter rail, for example, was down 95%. I was reading, it is going to be very challenging to bring those people, when they decide to start going back to Boston to commute, or Cambridge, or wherever. It's going to be a challenge to convince them that, hey, the MBTA, the commuter rail, is safe, it's clean, it's an alternative. You don't have to get back in your car, even if you took the commuter rail before. So that's something that I'm really trying to make sure that we don't get into a carpocalypse as soon as people start to commute back into work. And part of that is going to have to be more continued remote remote work for office workers who can manage that. But that, I don't know that that's really a long-term feasible everyday solution. Eventually people are going to want to get back into seeing people in person. And if not, that brings up other questions about making sure everybody has internet access, and making sure everybody has there's really a land use issue in that as well, because if everybody needs 2 spare offices in their houses, now all of a sudden I can't rent a 1-bedroom apartment, I've got to rent a 2-bedroom apartment, things like that. So, but that's a question perhaps for another day. Right now we're just trying to dig ourselves out of this. You did mention something about before we move on from the tolls, or from the electric vehicles. You mentioned something that came across my computer screen just recently, is that we entered into an electric truck compact with a number of states. I don't know if you saw that just now. And I think so my background is in freight transportation consulting. And I saw that, the California Air Resource Board has started to, make mileage requirements and encourage electric vehicles as well. So I think they said something about increasing the amount of electric trucks by 2030, which is really something that is extremely important, not just because, the trucks are so much of a source of emissions, particulate, things like that. But if you don't, in Europe, they have they've pushed for electric trucks, and they have much greater adoption. Still kind of on the bleeding edge, but if you don't push it, it's not going to happen, because these fleets turn over so very slowly. Were you aware of that sort of movement on the truck end? Because that was a huge surprise to me, and I'm happy for it, but I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, the trucks are really exciting. And in addition to that, there's just been this larger movement towards electric buses, which is really just one of the most sensible things as far as I'm concerned, because whether you're using them for MBTA buses or for school buses, there's a lot of opportunity to charge. And then there's even more opportunity in the summertime when they're not being used, where they can be used as batteries, which I think is a really cool dual use property for a lot of the electric buses to help reduce peak demand. So I think there's that larger movement, and we're fortunate in Massachusetts that we've moved away from coal for electric generation, but we are still pretty heavily reliant on natural gas. So that requires us to move more towards offshore wind. There's a movement afoot towards 100% renewable energy for electricity, which will certainly help continue to make this beneficial electrification of transportation and home heating even more impactful. But those are things that we have to keep pushing for as well. I'd say that's the other bill that people are talking about quite a bit in terms of big things. There's obviously a lot of smaller environmental and energy related bills about interconnection, sort of digging into the weeds a lot there. But between 100% renewable energy, which would change our overall goals, and the 2050 roadmap bill, they're the ones that are trying to set these big path forward for us as a Commonwealth, but it has effects on other sectors.
And that path forward would include, though, the kind of milestones on the way there, right? One of the things that keeps me up is that it's great to have these end goals of 2050, but the environment is not like a term paper you can write the night before. You've got you've got to make sure that you've planned it out and you're meeting those goals, because if you're short, 5 years out, 10 years out, it's going to be really, really, disruptive and challenging to make up that time
Yeah, that's exactly
towards the end.
what happens in these bills is we have to set really solid, meaningful deadlines, because, any administration can just say, well, we're going to leave it to the next guy to take care of it. Ideally, next gal. We haven't had a lot of those, but so it's important to have those there in order to make sure there's some teeth behind it, so that Eversource and National Grid are not just incentivized, but feeling both the carrot and the stick to make sure that they're meeting it. And I see a question here about keeping an eye on Eversource and others trying to add fees, and we are aware of that. It's really frustrating because everyone's trying to get a little piece of that pie, including the utilities. And the utilities, of course, I think have the struggle of being investor owned. So they're sometimes looking at things in the next quarter's profits as opposed to a long term. I think if they were looking at this long term and really thinking about transportation electrification, they would look at this differently, as opposed to how can we ensure that we're making a profit for the next quarter. And that can be put them in a tough place. And that's where we come into play.
That is something that hadn't really occurred to me, but you're right. The more that we electrify our transportation infrastructure, the more we're relying on the grid and these electricity providers. You would think that they would be incentivized then to move this along so that happens faster, and yet a lot of them are stuck in their the current business model, which again, you're right, emphasizes the next quarter. I work for a public company, and I know how that goes. So that's something that's very important, and something that I always bring up to people on the other end when talking about fossil fuel disinvestment from like pension funds and things like that. That if our goal again is to move to clean energy, investing in fossil fuels seems to be a bad deal forward, because we're already saying we want to get out of that business as a state and as an economy. Why are we investing in them? Why would we put our money there if we those pension funds are going to be around for a long time. They're not just next quarter. Yeah. they're forever. So we want to make sure we're investing in companies that are going to grow. So that's an interesting other side of that I really do appreciate. What sort of incentives though can we put out for solar? I know the net metering caps are being hit in a lot of regions of the state, and are kind of really slowing the growth of solar. And I know that additionally, there's the expense of putting up solar for homeowners can often mean that the people who are well off have the solar panels, and the people who are have less income are paying more for electricity, while your neighbor is getting paid for potentially for what they generate.
Yeah, I think we're really starting in here July of 2020 to continue to look at clean energy through an environmental justice lens. I know that representatives who represent places like Brockton, Roxbury, recognize that we really need to ensure that there's access to clean energy everywhere. And so community solar is really, I think, the movement, both because it's more cost effective in general, but also means that you can get to some of these communities that wouldn't otherwise have access to clean energy. And so that's another area where I think there's a big push with an eye towards the racial equity, in addition to the clean energy benefits. And, they're all tied together, as any good progressive will tell you, that these things are all related to one another. But at the same time, there are so many things that folks are fighting for that we have to make sure that we aren't just looking at the upper middle class, right, let's put solar on all of our rooftops perspective. I know that something that we've talked about in our community over and over is figuring out how to just increase incentives for solar canopies, We have so many parking lots out where we
Mm-hmm.
are, and you've got a fair number of parking lots where you are too. And figuring out how to make the best use of that space, recognizing that we can use it for some generation. But they're still, we're worried about net metering. There's a big docket happening at the federal level as well. And with this administration, one never knows exactly how things are going to fall. That they're trying to take away net metering authority from states, which I think would be really, really difficult for solar. But that's another reason why we have to continue to diversify our portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks are really investing in solar plus storage or wind plus storage, and making sure that we're looking at all these different technologies and not just relying on one. And that's sort of the nice thing about clean energy is you don't have to just do one thing. There are lots of opportunities. My big nerdy side loves energy efficiency, which is a very uncool topic. People are not talking about that or showing off the latest insulation upgrade in their house the way that they would show off a Tesla for sure. But it's one of those things that
your the blown insulation into your attic is not really conspicuous consumption, I suppose. Yeah.
no, even though
I could bring my computer over there to show the holes that are still patched over in my my stairwell to my attic, but again, yeah, not really going to be something I put on the campaign brochure.
no, nor is it, even when you're upgrading your dishwasher and you're not
Right.
taking a picture of your Energy Star label and showing everybody, look at how great this is. But those are the kinds of investments that we can also incentivize, when you're out looking for a refrigerator, when you're out looking for a dishwasher, making sure that we're incentivizing cost plus efficiency the way that a lot of folks do when they are looking for a car, right? You have that
Mhm.
MPG. And there's a lot of conversations going on at the State House. I don't know for this session, but in future sessions about giving your house basically
Yeah.
an energy efficiency rating. Just so folks know, is this going to be something where I'm facing a really big energy bill? Is this a really efficient house? And
Yeah,
how
that was going to be my next question for you, because I've seen that sort of legislation and those not that movement for like Energy Star stickers on your house, basically, not as the when you put it up for sale or as part of an home inspection or things like that. And I think that's something that, especially around here where the housing stock is pretty old. My house is over 100 years old, for example. Having that knowledge that, like, oh yeah, by the way, your house has no insulation in it, and you will be draining a tank full of oil basically every month if you don't do something about it. That would probably be information that we still would have bought the house, but we would have knowing going in is probably something that would have helped us. I don't know if that's the sort of things that you had in mind there.
That's exactly it. And I think the realtors are still wrapping their heads around that, because
Mm-hmm.
that changes the market dynamics for sure. But I live with an electrical engineer who I happen to be married with too. So we've looked at different components when we look at houses as opposed to others. And one for us was, really moving away from oil heat.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still, I think the last number is over 70,000 homes in Massachusetts with oil heat. And it's a question of how are we going to transition them off in a way that's cost effective? Because you're right, a lot of those are in these older homes, and it's a lot harder to either get natural gas in there, but maybe the next step is to really go for a heat pump.
Mm-hmm.
But are we incentivizing that? Not really. Are there businesses that transition from oil heat to heat pump? Not really. So there's a lot for us to do in terms of job creation and creating a market there that I think is super important for us as legislators to think about, especially as the economy is in a really tough position right now. These are all things where we can have some positive economic impact in addition to having positive environmental impact.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so the you did bring up the economy, so I did want to talk a little bit about the budget that we're looking into, not just the kind of the piecemeal budget that you're doing now, but next year. What can be what it's there, you know, a $6 billion hole you can't tax your way out of and you can't cut your way out of. There's too much bone, and there's, you know, not enough, you know, there's not enough revenue out there to make up for that. You know, what sort of environmental priorities do you think we need to be, you know, focused on like a laser to protect in an environment where it's going to be, you know, we're going to have to fight for every little bit of budget dollars.
Yeah, we are. One of the great things about the Senate climate bill is that it really comes at a very minimal cost. It's just adding 1 or 2 more jobs to state government, I think, in total. But overall, it's revenue neutral, which is super important right now, more than ever. I think a lot of municipalities have come to rely on the Community Preservation Act match. I know our community is having a vote on it this year, so if the money goes away for that, that becomes a really difficult conversation for folks to have. And preserving open space is one of those things that we need to keep working at, as well as maintaining a certain amount of funding for parks in DCR, which is not, which is an area that I know a lot of us find frustrating because we like having them there and then we don't fund them enough, and then, you know, people leave litter all over the place and then people get frustrated by that. So we have to put our money where our mouth is, and I think people are really starting to enjoy the state parks and the local parks a lot more in COVID times.
Yeah, and I see Emerson is just bringing that up. I mean, we are, as a family, we're relying on state lands just to get outside a lot more. We're relying on DCR land as well. I mean, here, you know, in Watertown, Cambridge, DCR is as much a park organization as it is a roadway, as it is basically part of, you know, MassDOT, because we have so many parkways that are maintained by DCR. So, you know, that it's particularly important to us. But yeah, so the outdoor spaces have really been, we've seen how important they are. If we're telling people, hey, it's safer to be outside, you know, wear your mask, but get outside. Don't be, you know, be, you know, squeezed in with people in small spaces. It's just safer to be out there. We do need to be, you know, making sure you can do it and do it safely. So yeah, so what Emerson is asking about, you know, what sort of, you know, is there a COVID part of this conversation that needs immediate attention?
And I think, you know, going back to a little bit about efficiency, but buildings in general, one of the things that we've found is that this is such a delightful time to get deferred maintenance done, because no one's in buildings, no one's using the MBTA. We ended up taking a little bit longer to do some repairs there, and because ridership was down 97%, no one really noticed. But I think that's actually an opportunity for us to go in. You know, does that mean putting in more efficient air conditioning where it's necessary, so we're reducing usage? Does it mean going in, putting solar panels on school buildings if they're not being used this fall? I think it's a lot of opportunity for environmental remediation to happen during that period of time, where you might not want that to occur when school children are next door, but it makes it ideal when people aren't in these crowded office buildings in the same way. So I think there's plenty of opportunity there, but I'd say the one area that we need to be careful about is not under investing in public transportation, because people are using it less, and people still have to use it, rely on it, and they will go back to using it in future times. This is just actually a reprieve more than anything else, and not an indicator of future ridership. And I think that that's something we have to make sure that we're not using skewed data from this period of time as we look forward towards future investments. That's something that I fear we're going to have to keep fighting for, as folks assume again that everyone's going to be working from home.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with a lot of folks as I talk to them, and they'll tell me, Steve, look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get on a bus again. I'm really not comfortable with that. And what I tell them is that, like, okay, well, do you have an option to take the bus? And they say, yeah. Well, and I tell them, well, a lot of people don't. If they have to go to work, they've got to take that bus in. So disinvesting from the public transportation is really saying, like, well, we don't care how you get to work, but we need you there. So we do need to make sure we're not disinvesting from public transportation. Number one, because there's some people who just absolutely need to take it. And we saw the difference in some of those bus routes during the peak COVID times, right? There were some that, barely anybody took the bus all day. I mean, the 71, that goes by my house, I was mostly empty during a lot of those times. But some of those routes through, Chelsea, East Boston, those were still heavily used at that time. And I think, doing things like keeping them free, as we've done for the past, few months, is another way to help incentivize people to take them, even if they might not, feel 100% comfortable. Keeping them free. There's a justice portion of that as well, to make sure that people who have to take the bus aren't impacted economically. I think there's an argument to be made that there's a lot of environmental justice with COVID, right? I mean, we saw Chelsea and Brockton, and these are places that have been breathing bad air because of where we've cited terminals, and where we've cited highways going through them, and where we've put these pollution and producing facilities nearby. They've got higher rates of asthma. They got worse outcomes from COVID. So some sort of mitigation on that front, I think, is also going to be important for us to do, just morally, going forward.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on in every which way. And so these are all things that we're thinking about as we, going back, put together the budget this year of, I think social services and healthcare need a ridiculous amount of investment, maybe more so than usual, which is a difficult conversation to have as to where that money is coming from compared to usual. But at the same time, we see time and time again that when we remove money from our state agencies, like DCR, like the Department of Energy Resources, like the Department of Environmental Protection, it's these low-income communities that suffer the most. And I think, I've heard from a lot of people in the 29th Middlesex by virtue of sitting next to them. And I know that the folks there care a lot about equity. They care a lot about their fellow human being. And it's not just about Watertown and your slice of Cambridge. It's about making sure that, everyone has access to clean air, clean water, and a good education across the Commonwealth. And I know that that's something that we are trying to think really hard about in this, especially recognizing we made this big promise to school districts and to kids that we were going to invest in their education starting this year, significantly more. And we're not really sure where that money is going to come from, or if we're going to be able to meet that this year. But at the same time, we don't want another generation of students to be missing out. And similarly, we're desperately trying to figure out what remote learning looks like. I know your kids, my daughter, are all privileged enough to have people vaguely around trying to keep them on task. But not everybody is. I say vaguely more about me, not about you.
No, believe me. But yeah, it has been, for us, we've been able to make it work. The two boys, and we've got enough room in our house that everybody has got mostly a spot where they can do their work from. But as you said, we made this promise to all these families, and some of those are students who were the least well served during this COVID time, right? Some of the school districts we were supposed to be helping to make right during the Student Opportunities Act. Those were the communities. Even Cambridge. In Cambridge, they were telling me like 20%, 25% of the students just disappeared during remote learning. Similar situation in Boston. In Watertown, I was at the school committee meeting yesterday, and it was better. It was, we were in high 80s, low 90s in terms of participation. But then when you drill down to English language learners, that number was much lower in terms of participation throughout the process of remote learning.
And it's a struggle because our typical, public space of the library, big library fan over here, as I suspect you were too, that's not available for folks to go and get internet, to have computer access, the things that they would normally rely on their air conditioning right now. That's a whole separate conversation of, how can we ensure that people stay physically safe in COVID times when they're not supposed to be inside and can't really be outside for very long? And what are we doing to ensure that those most vulnerable have a place to go? You can't sit inside a Dunkin' anymore. That's not available for people. On the other hand, to bring it back to environmental issues, I do appreciate the fewer number of coffee cups being just thrown out every day. I suspect that's been a big improvement environmentally as well. So hopefully we'll get back to reusable mugs in addition to reusable bags.
Yeah, that'll be nice. The cups I haven't noticed as much as the bags, but maybe that's just because of where I'm doing my walks. I did want to ask you something, because I looked through your bio and found out something that I didn't know, and that is that you are on the EPA's Clean Air Act Advisory Committee.
Oh yeah, that's fun times.
So I had to ask this, because knowing about the current administration and how they feel about the EPA and how they feel about the Clean Air Act, what do they have you doing things? What is that like? I can't even imagine what is being asked of you, if anything, during this time.
I don't get to talk about this much, Steve, so thank you for asking.
Well, I just saw it and I was like, oh my, I can't let that opportunity slip by, because I have to know.
Yeah, we meet about every 6 months or so, and we get updates from the administration. It's very fun because the vast majority of people who are on it are folks who truly believe in the Clean Air Act.
Sure, obviously, that's how you get on it, right? Is you care about these things.
Yes, that's not how everybody is, but
well, okay, fair enough.
And we really just, when we get administration officials up there, we drill down and ask some tough questions about why are you rolling back, car vehicle standards, what has necessitated these changes. But for the most part, what is important to remember, and this is one of the tough parts about the Trump administration that I think we're going to have to go back and do a lot of work on, is there are a lot of really dedicated public servants out there who are just keeping things moving along. We talk about the big ones about mercury, we talk about, greenhouse gases, but we don't necessarily talk as much about, SOx and NOx. And those are still regulations that need to keep moving along. And those are regulations that are statutorily required to be updated. So we hear about those for the most part. And there is a real push, and this is not from the administration, but just through the market. Not that I'm like super free market necessarily, but the market's really pushing coal out. And so they're faced with this, all these major changes. And as we transition more and more to rely on natural gas, now that has impacts fracking, obviously, further down the road, but it's really an interesting conversation every time we meet. I'm the only state legislator that's on it, and they all look at me like I'm just a politician, and I try and remind them that I do in fact know some things too. But it's an interesting conversation for sure. And every state has their own issues that we don't necessarily think about. I have friends who are trying to put solar panels in Texas, who are figuring out who owns the mineral rights for oil underneath the area where they're trying to put solar panels, and how to pay for that. So we're pretty fortunate here. Our natural resources are different, and we're, we've got the best water in the country, and would like to keep it that way as we keep fighting PFAS, which continues to be a big thing. I know Representative Kate Hogan is really the lead on that and pushing hard.
Mm-hmm.
But making sure our water quality stays high during this period of time is super important. We're all home, but I know that's also something that municipal budgets are struggling with too. There's not enough water bills coming in.
There's the municipal finance is struggling in a lot of ways. This commercial tax base, the restaurant taxes, the hotel taxes for some of these places that's getting hit. We've been pretty lucky in Watertown and in Cambridge that we've got a bit of a cushion, so we're not, knock on wood, hit too hard. Municipal services have not been impacted. I know they avoided cuts to education this year in this budget, and that has been very fortunate. I've seen other places where that's not been the case, and I don't know how they're going to manage. I don't know how Framingham is managing with the schools reopening on smaller class sizes, but also less money for the administration. But that's something I hope to talk about with some folks next week. Yeah, if there's any other questions, feel free to put them up in the chat. I did want to talk a little bit about wind, because you touched on it before, but the offshore wind, how much of that is work that the state needs to do, and how much of that is work that the federal government needs to take the lead on?
Yeah, a lot of it is sitting with the feds at this point.
Yeah.
And the Bureau of Ocean Management. But at the same time, one of the fun things about being a state legislator is that when you poke folks about it, they do feel compelled to respond, which you'll find. So that's an area where, we hope that our congressional delegation, and we stay on top of the congressional delegation to keep pushing for that, even those who, I believe you are also in Catherine Clark's district, as am I. And even though she might not be quite on the water the same way that some other folks are, I know that that's something she's paying close attention to as well.
We'll all be on the water if we don't do something about sea level rises, right? So
that's how I joke. I say, I didn't intend for Framingham to be waterfront property, but some days it sure does feel like the flooding is going to get us there. And then the other thing that compounds all these issues this year, but we just passed a big spraying bill around Tripoli and mosquitoes, and worked really hard to make sure that there were good provisions about not hurting pollinators, which is incredibly important from an environmental perspective. But at the same time, as we're asking more people to be outside and asking kids to be outside for school, and then also facing different types of threats from mosquitoes and ticks, it really compounds all of the problems that we're having right now. But we have so much. What's great is there's always work to do in this area. It never ends, and I consider that to be a good challenge, as I suspect you do as well.
Yeah, and I am really looking forward to joining you there next year. Knock on wood. We got 2 elections to get through before that happens, but I hope to be able to work on these. We can work on these things together starting next year. So of course, Emerson, thank you. My campaign managers put out in the chat my website, votesteveowens.com. You can find out more about the campaign there. You can volunteer, you can sign up for yard signs, you can donate, of course. Representative Robinson, how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, sure. For official business, maria.robinson@mahouse.gov. info@vote.maria.robinson. Similar concept as votesteveowens.com. But I'm you can find me very easily, and I'm trying to be responsive every which way. But thank you so much, Steve, for having me, and I really look forward to working with you for many years to come.
We're going to work hard to make that happen, Representative. So thank you for joining us. And I really appreciate your time and all the hard work that you do on Beacon Hill and at home through Zoom via in these days. So hopefully one day we'll all be able to get back to the State House and interact in person.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, and thanks to everybody for watching this. And next week, we'll have the announcement on the emails and on the Facebook page for the next town hall we'll be doing. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much. Have a good afternoon.